Good evening, everyone. We are just about to start the meeting itself. It's good to see a really filled up Council Assembly meeting today. I'd like to welcome you all to this Council Assembly meeting. I am Councillor Michael Shitu, the Mayor of Southwark Council and the Chair of this meeting. There are no planned fire alarm tests this evening. If you hear the fire alarm, please leave by the nearest fire exit and make your way to the agreed assembly point, which is St. John's Churchyard off Druid Street. Council security staff will be available to direct you. The toilets are located to the side of the room on my right and also off the main reception area. Please can you switch your mobile phones to silent, and thank you for your cooperation. We'll now be taking apologies for absence. I've received apologies for absence from Councillor Sam Doughton, Councillor Maria Lefoot-All, Councillor Sandra Ruse, and Councillor Reggie Pokola. I've not received any apologies for lateness. Are there any other apologies for absence or lateness? Yes, Councillor Branning.
For lateness. That was Councillor Eva Nakoto for lateness.
Thank you, Councillor Branning. Any other apologies for absence or lateness? Okay, in the absence of no further apologies, we move on to item 1.2 of our agenda, which relates to the announcements relating to this meeting. I'd like to remind people that we are in a pre-election period for the Mayor of London and London Assembly election. I ask all members to be mindful of the pre-election guidance while speaking in any debate. Sarah Fizi, acting as the monitoring officer for the meeting, will call on members, if necessary, to ask them to keep to matters which are not related to the GLA election. And for this meeting, we are recording the meeting, but we will not be live streaming it so that to make sure that we keep and to ensure we keep with the pre-election period guidance rules itself. I'll now be moving to item 1.3 of the agenda relating to notification of any items of business which I deem to be urgent. On Monday, I met with the group whips to consider the format of this evening's meeting. This is set out in the program motion which has been tabled this evening. The motion explains how this evening's business will be conducted. The meeting now needs to vote upon the motion. I'd like to move to the vote on the program motion. All those in favor? Agreed. Thank you. Please note that as part of the program motion, the following committee evidence will be received tonight, and they will have 5 minutes each to speak. Firstly, from Nicola Howard relating to Family Hub, together with Nicola Nobu, Surrey Square Primary School. Secondly, Ade Odunlade, which is Anmiata Noah Ajera Adeol of the South London listings. And finally, Nico Gordon from Better Bankside. The following deputations will be received tonight, and they will have 4 minutes each to speak. Firstly, Marcia Road residents. Secondly, from the Southwark Trade Union Council. And thirdly, from the Kirby Estates Resident Group and London Play. Members have agreed the program motion. I shall be moving the meeting on accordingly, and members are asked to keep to the agreed timings. Thank you. The clerk will now explain what other papers have been circulated.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Council Assembly. The following papers have been circulated for this meeting. The open supplemental agenda, which contains public questions, community evidence requests, deputation requests, and also the updated item 6.3 and amendments to motions. The main agenda papers were circulated much earlier, 7 public days before the meeting. And the following papers have also been circulated by email this evening and are available on the council websites. And these are members' questions and responses, late question and response, responses to public questions, and the program motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, we're now moving to item 1.4 on the agenda relating to disclosure of interest and dispensation. The monetary officer has given all members a dispensation to vote on item 6.3, which relates to the members' allowance scheme 2024 to 2025. Do any member wish to make any other declaration of interest? When making your declaration, can you please specify if it is a disclosable pecuniary interest, and please state the nature of the interest. Any member who declares a disclosable pecuniary interest in an item will be asked to leave the meeting for that item. When the item has been voted on, they will be welcome to return to the meeting. Does any member have any disclosable interest? Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I have a disclosable pecuniary interest in motion 2 as a resident.
Thank you very much, Councillor Roberts. I'll remind all members that please, when speaking, if you can be upstanding. I'm grateful. We will now move on. In the absence of any further disclosable interest, we'll now move on to item 1.5, which relates to the minutes of last meeting. Can we approve the minutes of the meeting of Council Assembly held on 21st of February 2024 as a correct record? Great. Thank you. As part of the program motion, it was agreed that the meeting should finish at 10 p.m. We'll now be moving to item 2 of the agenda, which relates to issues raised by the public, initially starting with petitions. We shall move to issues raised by the public. There are no petitions this evening. Relating to questions from the public, there is one question from the public this evening. The answer to the question has been circulated by email and is available on the Council's website. There is up to 15 minutes available for public question time. Public questionnaires have the opportunity to ask a supplementary question, and please do not make a speech. I'll now invite Charmaine Graves to ask a supplementary question of Councillor Sarah King, Cabinet Member for Council Housing. Please do go ahead, Charmaine.
The change in policy to make it easier to sell council homes is not financially or socially prudent. It is a short-term thinking. There's likely to be a change in government. So why is the council rushing to sell these family homes? Wouldn't it be better to wait for a better funding deal, which is likely to reduce the mismanagement and crucially renovate those voided properties and make them available for vulnerable residents? Those residents who are in need now. Surely investing in voided properties now is worth it if we will alleviate the hardship of vulnerable residents and reduce the massive temporary housing cost to the council.
Thank you for the question. I'll now call on Councillor King to respond to the question. Sorry, Councillor Stephanie Crine.
So first of all, Charmaine, thank you for your question. Actually, void properties sit in my portfolio as finance, not in housing, which is why I'm answering the question. I absolutely understand all the points that you make here. First of all, I just want to reiterate, the policy hasn't changed at all. We are still using the same policy. It's just the amount that goes to Cabinet for approval has changed. We haven't changed the policy on void disposals in any way, shape or form around that. The reason we're selling them, these are properties that have been void for a long period of time and they're uneconomical to actually to put back into use. So what we feel is it is better to actually steady the HRA, housing revenue account, by selling some of these void properties, which are really expensive to fit up around that, and invest that in our existing stock so that we make sure that some of our lower value voids, our voids on our council estates, can be turned over exactly for the reasons that you said, to help support people on our housing waiting list, to help support vulnerable residents and that. As well. We are absolutely committed to improving the quality of, and can maintain good quality housing stock. This is a way that helps us do that at this moment in time. And I know you say a change of government. I do feel though it'll be some time before we get any more favourable settlements because of the fact that what the Conservative government have done with housing revenue accounts over a decade and actually depleted council stock money around that. So just reassure you, we haven't changed the policy. We've just made it that the number that come to cabinet have changed with the limit for that. We are continuing to invest in void properties. We are investing in the turnaround times. We have reduced the turnaround times for some of our lower sort of voids that do not need as much work as that. And we're really confident that we can start to get those moving through the system so that residents, including vulnerable residents, are able to bid for them.
I'd like to thank the public questionnaire for attending this evening. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We'll now be moving on to item 3 on the agenda, which relates to the theme debate, initially considering the community evidence before us before considering the themed motion itself. The theme debate relates to Southwark 2030, a proud history and a vibrant future, harnessing all of the strengths of our borough to deliver opportunity for all. We shall now consider the first community evidence submission on the theme from Nicola Howard, Family Hub, and Nicola Noble, Surrey Square Primary School. Can officer please bring forward the requesters? Thank you. If you just have a seat. Place any empty seats. Please just occupy. Brilliant. Just to say thank you for attending this evening. You have 5 minutes in which to address the assembly. You can really split your time between each of the members of the team, but as long as you keep within the 5 minutes. You may start when you're ready.
Okay, thanks. Good evening, everybody. I'm sending apologies from Nicola Noble, who's unable to join us this evening. My name's Nikki Howard. I'm the director of First Place. We are currently a children and family centre making a transition into family hubs. And I'm joined by Ola Adenais, one of our parent service users, and he's also supporting us to deliver one of our projects, which is the Rose Vouchers for Fruit and Veg scheme. Also Nicole Hooper, who's a deputy manager at Bede House, managing the Starfish project. That's also a long-standing partner of ours. And my colleague Elena Salazar, who is our family services manager. So we're coming this evening to talk to you about the importance of partnership working in the community in providing the best help and opportunities and outcomes for children and families that we support. The partnerships start with the families we help. Ola's a great example of that. And also our wonderful partners in the voluntary and maintain sector who provide a wide range of services and support, and with our funders, one of which is Southwark Council. In order for these partnerships to flourish, they must be outward looking, open to new ways of working, and aware of the skills and knowledge of others. As a charity which grew out of the Sure Start programme in Southwark, we brought together health and education and family support services. We know this model works really well. So strong partnerships bring together the expertise of established organisations as well as those of the community and voluntary sector, and mean we're able to provide more and better services to families, maximising the resources we have while avoiding service duplication in a time of very limited funds. Our joint work with Bede House and the University College of Osteopathy, for example, predate First Place. We've been in the borough, our centre has been in the borough for 18 years. And we've developed over this time in response to the needs of the community and new initiatives in the borough. As the first family hub in Southwark, we've linked our osteopathic service, for example, to the first 1,001 days infant feeding project that's delivered by the health service. And also we now have a service, a counselling service in the evening for school-aged children who are survivors of domestic abuse that we run in partnership with Bede House. We're also really proud of our work as the lead partner for the Alexandra Rose charity, delivering the Rose vouchers for Fruit and Veg project in Southwark, which we've been doing since 2018. It's the largest project in the country and the only one managed by a voluntary sector organisation, generously funded by Impact on Urban Health and this year by Public Health in Southwark. So to help foster partnerships and collaborative working, it's helpful for commissioners and funders to be aware of the existing work in the borough to avoid duplication and provide opportunities to add value to new and existing work. We're lucky to be in a borough with a dynamic and thriving voluntary and community sector who have demonstrated, particularly in recent years, its ability to respond to challenges quickly and effectively through partnership working. And we look forward to developing new partnerships over the coming years and bringing more support to families who need it. So I'd like to ask if anybody has any questions for, particularly for Bede or for my team.
Sorry, have you finished? Okay, thank you very much. Just to say thank you for the evening, and if you could just just head back to your seats, please. Thank you. Thank you. We shall now consider the second community evidence submission on the theme from South London Listens. Can officers please bring forward the requester? Thank you. If you please try to have a seat in any available seats. Thank you for attending this evening. You have 5 minutes in which to address the Assembly when you're ready.
Is Ade Odunlade. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for South London and Moseley. South London and Moseley is a lead partner on the South London Listening program, which comprises of 9 local authorities, almost about 150 community organizations. And this has been built on about 10,000 people since 2010 listening. And this is about how we want to try and change the narrative around mental health, how we want to try and engage the community as part of our participation in mental health, and to make sure that the issue of stigma, employment, housing, all of those are addressed, and to work in partnership with local communities. So I'm going to invite Miata to talk about Be Well. Miata.
Everybody, my name is Miata Noah. I work at Harris Girls Academy East Dulwich. I'm a house leader and a safeguarding lead. So I had the privilege of setting up a Be Well hub at my school, where we run events according to the mental health calendar and support students through peer support. So Be Well for me is one of the wins from the South London Listens campaign, and is all about putting communities at the heart of the solution for mental health challenges. This work is shifting everything on its head.
Sorry, can I just ask you to speak to the microphone? Thank you.
Sorry. It is seeing people in neighbourhoods not as simply service users or problems to deal with, but seeing them as key to the solutions. It's not communities merely being consulted, but actually wielding power. It's not seeing particular groups as hard to reach, but thinking about how your services, institutions are hard for communities to actually reach. Mental health is something that I'm passionate about. During the pandemic, I took part in the London Listens campaign, where we heard about the need for wait times to be reduced for mental health support. And so we worked together to co-produce a solution called the CAMS Virtual Waiting Room for parents and carers. So the mental health ambassadors and students that access CAMS will have the privilege of being a part of a focus group that will help to facilitate a virtual waiting room for young people, which is an exciting opportunity. So these are steps in the right direction and great wins. We want to continue to make changes in our school community and listen closely to our students, but other challenges remain. One of the biggest causes of the mental health crisis is housing, or the lack of it. Students are placed in temporary accommodation and often outside of borough at a great distance. Families are bearing the extra costs of their child travelling long distances to school, and increased financial burden of the cost of travel. Talk less of them being placed away from their community and their support systems. At the heart of all of this is the child, who may have a complex issue or safeguarding concerns. Thus, the move compounds their mental health. Their grades may slip, and the attendance can adversely be affected. Losing one's home can be traumatic for the children involved and their parents. Parental mental health can impact negatively on their children, as they can unconsciously transfer the worries onto their children, and often some families are forced to leave the school. For some children, the school is an anchor in their lives and a source for their stability. Our context: social deprivation, self-harming, suicidal ideation, lack of parental engagement, persistent absenteeism, children with complex needs, and this is the tip of the iceberg. If we want to tackle the biggest challenges around mental health, we can't see it separately from everything else. Low wages impact our mental health. Poor housing conditions impact our mental health. We need more solutions, such as dedicated services, as services in place are often oversubscribed and wait times are ever increasing, which means some students never get the help that they need. We need trained mental health practitioners that work in schools instead of schools using existing staff that already have a very heavy workload and cannot use their whole time to support such a high level of mental ill health. Thank you.
Presentation this evening. I'd like to enjoin you that you all become an ambassador for mental health and join us in making sure that we change the narrative about mental health. Thank you very much.
I'd like to thank you for attending this evening. We shall now consider the third community evidence submission on the theme from Nicole Gordon, Better Bankside. Can officer please bring forward the requester? Thank you for attending this evening. You have 5 minutes to address the Assembly.
To achieve any meaningful impact around the climate agenda, collective action is absolutely fundamental. We're here to talk to you about the borough and business delivering together on climate action. I'm Nicole Gordon, Chief Executive, Better Bankside Business Improvement District. We've enjoyed a long-standing relationship with Southwark Council, and the project we want to highlight tonight is an example of that partnership really working. I'm joined by Mim Figueiredo, project lead for the project, and Hannah Padello from Estate Insurance Group. We're demonstrating a co-designed, place-based approach to achieving neighbourhood net zero. Better Bankside, with Team London Bridge, Blue Bermondsey and the Elephant and Castle Business Forum and Southwark Council, has developed a model that is proving to be successful at achieving business decarbonisation. The Southwark Climate Collective was built off the back of a pilot that we ran in 2021 funded by the Mayor of London, which in 1 year resulted in businesses achieving a carbon reduction of 16% against a 10% target. 160 SMEs across the borough are participating, including Shakespeare's Globe, Southwark Cathedral, Dulwich Picture Gallery, Peckham Platform and Ministry of Sound. Collectively, we will reduce carbon by 1,200 tonnes by March 2025.
Lead for the programme. More than 95% of businesses based in Southwark are SMEs or micro businesses, and research has identified that the core barriers to SMEs engaging in climate action are lack of funding, time, and lack of knowledge and skills. The Southwark Climate Collective is a programme that offers practical support designed to address these challenges. The 160 participating businesses will receive bespoke technical support in one of 4 areas of business operations: energy, freight, waste, and supply chains. They'll also receive a series of free training and networking sessions designed to bring together a diverse range of businesses from across the borough and form a community for sharing knowledge and ideas as they pursue their decarbonisation journeys. One of our specific goals for the programme is around engaging and supporting Black, Asian and minority ethnic owned businesses. We've worked closely with the Council's High Streets and Town Centres team to promote the programme to the Council's database and gain visibility through Council newsletters. Through the Council, we've also established great connections with Elephant and Castle Business Forum and the SE5 Forum in Camberwell to engage and target some of the Latin businesses in Elephant and Castle, as well as businesses from the south of the borough. As a result, 20% of registered businesses are Black, Asian or minority ethnic owned or led. Earlier this month, we held our first networking event, which was attended by 80 people, including Hannah, one of our participants, who will share more about the benefits of taking part.
And I'm Hannah from the office manager at the Estate Insurance Group. And I also wanted to thank the Southwark Climate Collective, or SCC, for helping local businesses in reducing our carbon footprint at this moment in time. As we are an SME as well, we don't have a budget at the moment for sustainability. And even if we would have it, we don't necessarily know where to start from. So having an expert advisor next to us, guiding us through this process is extremely helpful. We have benefited from this program already quite a bit, for example, when applying for public projects. And also we estimated within 5 years, our clients' agenda will shift, wanting to work with more sustainable businesses. So in a way, SEC has already future-proofed us for this time. We also estimate, we have noticed that the SEC has had quite a bit of impact on the local community. Our CEO owns 2 properties within the area, and within one of these properties where I work, we already implemented better processes in energy and recycling, and we plan to do the same in the second property in the future. We also noticed that, obviously, as an SME as well, we are aiming to reach our net zero targets for 2050, or now for 2040. And without SEC, this would have been very, very difficult, because now we have a really targeted approach on how we, what next steps we take. Another good point to note is that during the networking events that SCC has organized in the past couple of weeks, we have met quite a few other business owners and other collaborators. We have met also potential clients. So it has been extremely helpful so far to working with SCC. So thank you so much.
Could do now is stop. It's only been made possible by a UK share prosperity funding of £650,000. We need to make the move from piecemeal grant funding to a sustainable way forward. The council could be an enabler to support a fair transition to net zero by leveraging on council receipts, such as planning gains, offset payments, or innovative use of business rates. We have the opportunity to create an action plan that builds on the momentum and knowledge gain to ensure a legacy that extends beyond the lifestyle of the FCC and delivers on our shared goals, and we need to do this together. There's an obvious link here to Southwark's 2030 ambitions on the climate agenda, but this model also aligns to the ambition for connected communities, a Southwark where people can share their skills and knowledge, and a place that Southwark people can come together.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We will now consider the themed motion. Councillor Kieran Williams, Leader of the Council, you have 7 minutes in which to present the themed debate and the motion on the theme.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to all 3 groups for coming this evening for the brilliant work that they're doing in our borough, showing how working together in many different ways can deliver for our community. In this room, we are united in our love of Southwark and our pride in our community and in the history and diversity of our borough. But it wasn't my love of Southwark that made me stand to be a councillor. It was the things that we need to change. So tonight I want to talk about that change, about our future and the shared goals we need to deliver together. For as proud as I am of our borough and our council, and let us be in no doubt about the transformative change this Labour administration is delivering. I'm also clear-eyed, as I know you are, that there is much more to do. After 14 years of failed Tory and Lib Dem governments, our country is at breaking point. 1 in 3 children in our country are living in poverty. 1 in 22 children in our city are homeless. People, young and old, are struggling to put food on their table. In a nation as wealthy as ours, that is frankly unacceptable. The question...
Councillor Williams, can I ask you to sit down for a second? Members of the public, you're here to observe the Council Assembly itself. You're not here to contribute to the debate at this junction. Can I please remind you not to interrupt the speakers? If this carries on, then we may have to consider the alternative options of asking you to step out. Please, the debate, the contributor must be heard, please. Councillor William, please carry on.
Mayor. So the question to all of us is, what are we going to do about it? The easy answer would be to say change the government, and yes, we need to do that. But in this room, we've got a bigger responsibility, a responsibility to the people of our borough here. And that's exactly what this Labour administration has been delivering on. A response to the pandemic and cost of living crisis that's been second to none. School standards up and free school meals extended. New and better parks, libraries, leisure centres and care homes. 5,000 workers lifted out of low pay by our work on the living wage, and more new council homes built than any other borough in the country. I could go on. No council is delivering more. I want to thank every Labour councillor in this room for their hard work making all of this happen, and all of the workers across our council and partner organisations and the volunteers in our community for every contribution you have made. We have much to celebrate. But I say again, there is much more to do. The good news is, unlike Rishi Sunak and the Tories, who have given up governing Britain, I'm determined that we do deliver more, and I know every Labour councillor in this room is too. That's why we launched Southwark 2030 last year, to ask the people of this borough, what change would you like to see next? And I want to thank the thousands of residents that participated. We've heard from people young and old about the things they love about Southwark, our town centres, our schools, our parks, and above all, the strength of our community. They told us about the things they want to change too. The struggle to make ends meet. The sense that for many, so many of the opportunities in our city and borough are out of reach. The soaring house prices. These are not challenges unique to Southwark. They're the story of London and Britain today. But closing that divide is the task that I'm determined that we deliver on together. It's not an easy task. There is no silver bullet. It requires determination and action delivered against clear goals that directly address our residents' priorities. And those goals I'm setting out today. Goals developed with our community and with all of you, and with our partners across the NHS, the voluntary sector and business, so we can deliver them together, a Southwark united with a common purpose. First, ensuring every child can develop and learn, and we've just heard the brilliant work of First Place in doing that. We know that inequality starts in life in the first years, so we must start to close the gap then. We've driven up standards in our schools and made sure we have mental health provision for all of our young people. Now we'll go further, increasing mental health support for children with educational needs and disabilities, and launching a new challenge with all of our schools and children's centres to close the learning gap. Second, decent and affordable homes. Because housing is our residents' top priority, as we have heard tonight, and I'm sure we'll hear later in the meeting too. We're already delivering more council homes than any other council in the country. Now we'll go further, fixing our repair service, and yes, we need to do more to fix it, tackling damp and mould, bringing forward yet more council homes, and driving up the standard of private rented homes. Third, making Southwark safer from crime and violence. tackling our residents' second biggest concern by being, yes, that old phrase, tough on crime and tough on the complex causes of crime, investing in our young people, building confidence in our police force. Fourth, closing the health gap so more people stay well. As we've heard tonight, mental health is a top concern for our residents. We've already extended mental health support for all young people in our borough, and now we'll work with our NHS partners and communities to extend it to adults too. Fifth, growing an inclusive economy with more good jobs. We know good jobs transform lives. We've created thousands more in this borough, 75,000 over the last decade. But we'll create more in our green industries, in our life sciences, and we'll work with the big organisations in our borough to make sure Southwark residents get those jobs and benefit from them too. And finally, making Southwark a clean energy borough with clean air and zero carbon emissions, with green and healthy transport, and our homes with clean energy as well, engaging our whole community in that transition. Over the next few months, we'll finalise our shared plan, agreed with our partners and with you, focusing our collective efforts on the most impactful things we can do to close the divides within our community and give everyone in our society a good chance in life. Delivering our shared goals, closing the rifts. Together we can and will succeed. Why? Because few places in the world have the potential that Southwark has. The potential that comes from our world-leading hospitals, universities and businesses. The potential that comes from having a community drawn from every corner of the world. The potential of a transformative Labour Council working hand in hand with the incredible people of our borough.
The lead opposition spokesperson will now have an opportunity to reply to the cabinet members' statement or to the leader's statement and speak on Amendment A. Councillor Richard Bentley, you have 5 minutes in which to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, no one in this room is arguing that it's wrong to have aspirations, to have a direction of travel, to commit to a better tomorrow. And yes, we are all deeply proud of Southwark, its people and its heritage. But the vague platitudes conjured up under the Southwark 2030 banner seem more about self-congratulation than setting out a meaningful path to progress. There is not one single tangible commitment in this motion. And I am certain, and I would say it's probably been made clear tonight, that many residents won't recognise this rosy picture that you're painting of your record here in Southwark. Labour is not just at risk of gaslighting residents, as one Labour member said at the last meeting. You are gaslighting residents. The problems facing our communities are real and immediate, but this 2030 image is a fantasy where there is sufficient affordable housing, where damp and mould isn't plaguing our council homes, where kids aren't having to sleep 5 in a bedroom and being told that the living room can be another bedroom. Parents aren't wondering if their child's nursery or school is going to close, where streets aren't piling up with litter and fly tipping. This decision to operate in this fantasy rather than address the real issues is insulting. Now, 2030 is 6 years away, and much can change in that time. If we look back, 6 years ago, we were still in the EU. Corona was just a light beer, and inflation was a worry for economists rather than those trying to buy food. At that point, Theresa May was the worst Prime Minister we'd ever had. What little did we know? Now, we at least hope that we're soon rid of this disastrous Conservative government. On that, I know we all agree. And I hope that that change in government will bring about those desperate changes that we need to local government funding. But in the meantime, what are we supposed to tell people who come to us for help? We are in crisis now, and to delay fixing issues now is wrong. When someone comes to us saying that damp and their mould is damaging their family's health. When a vulnerable person has been waiting years on a runaway housing waiting list. 17,500 families are on that waiting list. It is unacceptable. What about those people who are coming and saying they've been waiting over a year for occupational therapist referral because they can't have a bath or a shower in their own home? This is so utterly degrading, and it shames us all. For those young people in Southwark who look to us to protect their futures when tackling the climate emergency, for people who don't feel safe on our streets and our estates, what do we tell them? Just wait 6 more years, it'll be better then? It's not good enough. So please, pull yourselves out of this 2030 echo chamber and join us here in the real world. We need to fund our struggling services and not just squirrel away money on these vanity projects and yet another strategy. We need to actually fix the problems we have affecting people's lives right here, right now, and not hire a director of communications to tell people that these problems don't exist. We all aspire to live in a thriving, diverse, green, healthy, safe borough, a safe city, a safe world. But we can only make that a reality if we stand up to the issues that we're facing right now, right here, and put our time, resources, and energy as councillors and other partners in this borough into making people's lives better right here, right now, and not in 6 years' time. Thank you.
As part of the programme motion, we've agreed to have a combined debate of the motion and the amendment. I have a list of councillors who wish to speak as part of the programme motion, and I'll read out the name in the order which they're likely to be called. But if there are any additional councillors that would like to speak, please do raise your hands up if your name is not on the list. Councillor Barry Agrove, Councillor Jasmine Ali, Councillor David Watson, Councillor Richard Leeman, Councillor Susan Abacho, Councillor James McCash, Councillor John Batson, Councillor Natasha Ennin, Councillor Ian Winfield, Councillor Victoria Mills. Okay, Councillor Marty Satan. Okay, I'll now call on Councillor Barry Agrove to speak, to be followed by...
It's the 20th of March 2030, and it's been a very heartening 6 years, not just here in Southwark, but in the wider world too. We're in the second term of a Labour government and now starting to see very clearly how the much needed investment in our public services is reversing the deterioration in the fabric of national life caused during those despairing years leading up to 2024's change of government. Abroad, things have picked up too, with the capitulation of Russian forces from all sovereign Ukrainian territory, and our former but soon to become again European partners seeing off the existential threat from the extreme right. Yes, it's been a very heartening 6 years in Southwark. That's the word on the street. That's the topic of conversation as a grandmother and her grandson Kevin sit together on a bench between the planters of one of the many even more much loved Streets for People schemes. I'm so glad that Southwark took the time to listen to people in 2024 and then acted upon it, the grandmother said to her grandson. Yes, Grandma, replied the doting grandson, adding, there is so much I like about Southwark, the schools, the parks, but what I like best is Mum and Dad's decent and affordable home. And it is true. Southwark Council worked not only to ensure an affordable supply of housing for everyone who needed it, but also making every home throughout the borough decent has been nothing short of remarkable. And indeed, when it's time for this young man to take his first step into the adult world, he'll have an outstanding state sector inclusive education, founded on a first 5 years of development and learning, and he'll have the guarantee of a good job or equally brilliant post-16 education, things that too many of his parents' generation could only dream of. Today, in 2030, we have a confident and succeeding Southwark that values its young people, like Kevin. Grandmother Sylvia, too, she's benefiting from the encouragement given to adopt a more healthy lifestyle with nutritious food choices. That public spaces are once again safer, not just for the old, but for the young too. And for the first time throughout her adult life, she feels an assurance that the police are serving all our communities well. Who would have thought of it? A Southwark of neighbourhoods, a clean energy borough with zero carbon emissions, where the 10-year life expectancy gap is all but eliminated in a positive way. And people-powered Southwark. Mr Mayor, Cabinet members, councillors, I bring you 2030.
Councillor Jasmine Ali.
Mr Mayor, Southwark 2030 has engaged with over 2,000 residents about the kind of borough they want to live in. And one of the two top things troubling our people is children. And before I go on to, my thoughts, I did want to say to Councillor Bentley that actually some of the things that we have done in this borough has been in spite of some of the things that you have done. Austerity, our flagship policies like free school meals, stopped our families collapsing. So I just wanted to remind you of that. Look, today, all over Britain and all over the world, our children are unhappy. This month, Bernardo's released its Changing Childhoods, Changing Lives report, and they show how children are now bombarded with media about challenges they face: inequality, climate crisis, health, worries, housing and war. And just today, we heard about the World Happiness Report, an annual report for about 140 nations coordinated by Oxford University's Wellbeing Centre, showing disconcerting drops in youth happiness. They say there is very clear evidence that social media contributes to poor mental health, having enough money, finding a job, getting good grades of schools were their top worries, but a higher proportion of children who thought their family were not well off or who had low well-being were worried about every aspect for their future. Mental health is declining far and fast, and we have great schools in Southwark, but we must work together to do more. Mental health, emotionally based school avoidance, exclusions, annual data from the DfE show that permanent exclusions in Southwark are below the inner London and national rate for 21-22. However, Mr Mayor and colleagues, there is something else going on in our schools. In fact, for the same year, 2,095 suspensions were issued by Southwark primary and secondary and special schools. Combined for this year, suspensions have shot up by another 14%. And obviously, like with exclusions, you're more likely to be suspended if you're black, Asian, minority, ethnic, have a special need, from a disadvantaged background or had care experience. Our vulnerable children and young people are more likely to be affected by county lines, gang activities and youth violence. So what to do? By 2030, we want to have significantly reversed this heartbreaking decline in children's well-being, but we are already started. We're committed to the journey we started to support 100% of children and young people with mental health needs. We are at the start of a revolution in special education needs and disabilities. We've already launched our inclusion board. We will continue to invest in early intervention and prevention, and we'll launch our summit with partners this year. I will hold regular meetings with our head teachers to find out what's going on with the new trends around suspensions, and we will have a much better funded, therapeutic, nurturing, inclusive education for our children and young people. The Tory school system, the behaviours want us to believe that their league tables matter more than every child emphatically does not matter. We will fight with passion, as we always have done, for our heartfelt belief that every child deserves a good education every step of the way. We will stick with children, work with families, build strong relationships so that all our children and young people can access a good education, Mr Mayor, because in Southwark...
Thank you, Councillor Ali. Thank you. I'll be calling on Councillor David Watson to be followed by Councillor Richard Leaming.
Thanks very much, Mr Mayor. Sorry, I didn't know whether that was a point of order. Or it's just to speak. Okay. Thanks very much, Mr Mayor. Just wanted to point out that Councillor Bentley wasn't actually a member of the coalition government in 2010, despite her aspirations for higher office, which voters of Southwark can help us fulfil in the forthcoming parliamentary elections later this year, hopefully. The aspirations of Southwark 2030 are commendable, of course. Common sense, I would even go as far as to say patently obvious. Of course, residents want their children to flourish, to have good homes that they can afford, and for the borough to be safe. This is real forward, not back, happy, not sad level stuff. We spent months asking people what they wanted, and they told us they wanted life to be better. Well, thank goodness that this disastrous Tory government hasn't extinguished all hope. But really, we know all of this. Rather than floating around in the stratosphere, this administration really needs to focus on getting the basics right. Residents with breathing difficulties because of damp and mould in their flats want the council to sort that out. Now, not in 6 years' time. Residents with broken windows, malfunctioning heating and security concerns want a repairs service that works. Now, not in 6 years' time. Just a few weeks ago, we heard from a member opposite that totally deny that there were any issues with the repairs service. No one raises any issues on the doors when I ask if there are any problems, they said. Well, he's not knocking on enough doors. Residents in my ward, desperate for affordable homes, watch concrete and glass towers rising around them, office blocks, flats for millionaires, but precious little affordable housing. Now, building homes isn't instantaneous, so seeing some affordable housing in Borough and Bankside in 6 years would be welcome. But the administration have already had 14 years to make no progress. They're also selling off council homes, and since 2010, they've knocked down more council homes than they've built. I'm so glad the council has listened to residents and taken action, Councillor Hardgrove said. Well, that would certainly be a change from the last 14 years of this administration. The council must get the basics right. That is what the corporate peer review said. That is what residents tell us. And that is what Liberal Democrats would do.
I'd like to call on Councillor Richard Leaming to be followed by Councillor Susan Abacha.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. One of the things that I talk about a lot in my day job are the UN's 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. So it's a good thing we don't have a Liberal Democrat government. Just imagine if we did. Our ambassador to the UN would be telling them, don't bother, just sort out the easy stuff now. Don't imagine a much better future. It's pointless. Anyway, I've got the website open in my browser, and the other day my daughter came home from school and casually remarked, 2030, that's a long way away. Well, I guess if you're 13, 2030 is a long way away. But for the rest of us, it is only around the corner. And what is also around the corner for the young people in this borough is the absolute mess my generation have made of the climate. We've screwed it up, and the young people of this borough are going to be, and the rest of the world, are going to be experiencing the downsides, which is why 2030, Southwark 2030 matters so much. We have to imagine a better future for our young people. Runaway climate change is also around the corner. 46 degrees summer temperatures, supercell storms, the headline in yesterday's papers. And it's in that context that Goal 6 in Southwark 2030 matters so much. It says, make Southwark a clean energy borough with clean air and net zero carbon emissions. That's a sort of ambitious target we're going to have to deliver, and we need to keep delivering if we're going to allow our young people to have a viable future. The government has no plans for dealing with climate change. It's just another front in their increasingly tedious culture war. Take their absurd plan for drivers, a plan which fails on its own terms. We've had a plan for drivers for decades. That's why our streets are clogged with traffic. That's why we need streets for people to deliver a sustainable future for our young people. And it's the hard work of challenging climate change is left to councils and our local partners. And that's why we're going to need to switch more journeys to healthy, clean transport. We've just come out of a consultation on a CPZ in Dulwich, and I know I can honestly say that we've listened to our residents, we've thought about what they've said, and we're going to deliver a scheme that works. But delivering the scale of ambition in this document, which means we need to continue the dialogue with our residents, and that's why we need a Director of Communications, so we can fulfil the democratic principle of talking to our residents. It's not hard. Just in the recent weeks, I've had two conversations which matter about this. The other day, I knocked on a door where my data told me the resident was a Tory. When he answered the door, he looked like a Tory. I said, "What's your feedback?" He went, "Parking." I thought, oh dear. Then he said, "There's too much of it. Get rid of it." And I was like, "Oh, we're on the same page. Thank the Lord for that." "You've heard about our consultation," I said. He went, "Oh, I can't be bothered with that. Just get on with doing it." On Saturday, I talked to a woman who explained in some detail about why our consultation was biased. She was a market research researcher, she told me. When I managed to get a word in edgeways, I told her that I also work at the research agency, and I was able to explain the law to her. And she had the grace to admit that she actually didn't understand what she was talking about.
Thank you. Thank you. Can I please remember as members of the public to please respect those councillors who are making contributions on the floor. Can I call on Councillor Susan Abacha to speak, followed by Councillor James McCash?
Mr. Mayor, as we look ahead to Southwark future in 2030, we recognize the importance of the key pillars for our collective well-being health, and should present a roadmap, a blueprint, and show our community to foster healthier and more equality society. 1. Closing the well-being gap through the promotion of accessible healthcare and community engagement by championing and aiming at closing this gap. This can ensure that every individual has the opportunity not just to survive, but to thrive. 2. Prioritizing mental health, supporting all ages, genders, and social economic statures, breaking this stigma and providing necessary service. It's a fundamental aspect for our humanity, deserved of unconditional support and understanding in realizing our vision for 2030 Southwark. 3. Ensuring the nutrients of food, education, community gardens, and partnership with local procedures. By this, we strive to ensure that every citizen can partake. 4. Investing in community social-based health and social care, fostering connections and solidarizing, and also amplifying the voices of those who are in the front line. And in conclusion, let us embark on this journey together, a journey fulfilled by hope, compassion, and unwavering resolves. Let us not merely engage in a better Southwark 2030, but let us actively shape it, brick by brick, heart by heart, for in our collective effort lies the promise of a brighter, healthier future for each and every one of us. Thank you.
I call on Councillor James McCash to be followed by Councillor John Batson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Southwark 2030 is a reminder of why we must listen to residents whilst nonetheless articulating a clear vision for the future. 2030 is the final year of our Streets for People strategy. So I want to talk about its community engagement programme. This is on track to be the biggest consultation the Council has ever done. We have sought the views of over 6,000 residents. We have an online portal where residents can draw on a map of their neighbourhood the places where they want to see improvements, from trees to benches, from pedestrian crossings to new cycle lanes. Tangible, concrete information to shape our work. But we know that online portals like this do not reach all parts of our borough. So we are not waiting for the community to come to us. We are going to the community, going door to door on the streets where we have the lowest response rates to make sure that we are listening to the people whose voices are sometimes ignored. And we know who they are, those on the lowest incomes, disabled people, and those from diverse ethnic backgrounds. And finally, we've engaged a group who are so often overlooked, our children. We have gone into schools to ask the young adults of 2030 what they want on their streets. And perhaps we've asked the young man that Councillor Hargrove spoke about shortly before. The information we are gathering will shape our work right now, Councillor Watson, and for the rest of the decade. But let me tell you what we are not consulting on: our principles and our vision, because we know that residents support them. We believe that Southwark can be better, and through our Streets for People strategy, we have articulated a vision for how. We believe in clean air and healthy streets, and we do not accept that hundreds of our residents should die early from poor air. We believe in safe routes for our children to get to school, free from danger. And we believe in green and pleasant neighbourhoods with places for the community to get together and for children to play. That's what we believe. That's our vision for 2030. It's a vision that unites us as a council, and it's a vision of residents to support.
I call on Councillor John Batson to be followed by Councillor Ian Wingfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we look ahead to envisage how we want the borough to be in 6 years' time, let's imagine a time where local people we represent hold secure jobs with decent pay. It allows them to provide for their family, afford to live in close proximity of their workplaces. They have enough left over at the end of the month to save towards holidays or spend on nice things for their children. And if they can't work for whatever reason, there are social structures in place to catch and support them. Now, we don't have to look too far back to remember times under a Labour government when a strong social contract was in place. People knew that if they worked hard, played by the rules, then society would look after you. But over the last decade, that social contract has been ripped up by this Conservative government. People are now working every possible hour in multiple jobs just to afford the basics. My hope, which I'm sure is shared by many in this room, is that by 2030 we will have long seen the back of this Tory government, who have presided over stagnant growth with stalled productivity, where wages can't keep up with the cost of living, and a widening gap between the wealthiest and the poorest, where people cannot afford to live near the places they work. This is why, when the Southwark 2030 consultation opened, people put prosperity right at the heart of it, because they know an inclusive and fair economy where people are paid a fair wage in secure and safe employment is the key to unlocking the other Southwark 2030 goals. Now, as the leader said, we've made good progress when it comes to helping residents into work and lifting people out of low pay. Supporting over 300 employers to sign up to the London Living Wage Pledge will have a transformative impact on over 5,000 people who work in Southwark. And I'm sure those numbers will only continue to grow. But there is more that we can do. A truly inclusive economy is one where everyone feels they have equal access to opportunity. This is not the case at the moment. We need to offer more tailored support so local people feel prepared when job hunting, or understand what training, education and development is needed to get them into the careers they want, or into industries where we know there's going to be growth, and they need to be able to access it. This is especially true for young people. Members of the Youth Parliament told us as much at November's Council Assembly. Finally, that we still have such stark pay gaps in this country is frankly embarrassing. I know there's been lots of work done to reduce the ethnicity pay gap which exists here in this council, but it must be closed and it must be shut for good. Once we have done that, we can show ourselves as a leading example and support our partners, Anchor Network members and other employers to close gender and ethnicity pay gaps across the borough. Only then will we have the inclusive economy that people have told us to prioritise. Thank you.
I'll call on Councillor Ian Wingfield to be followed by Councillor Victoria Mills.
Thank you, Your Worship. I want to first talk about the wider society around us. We live in a country where a substantial number of families face a daily choice between eat or heat and must rely on the assistance of charity to live on, whether this support is via food banks, religious organisations or community groups. I'm taken back in time as this is the 40th anniversary of the miners' strike. As a student, I visited the Kent coalfield to help, and I witnessed families queuing up at soup kitchens to get their one meal a day, and young children running around barefoot as their parents couldn't afford any shoes or socks. Who would have thought that was Britain of the late 20th century, let alone the start of the 21st century? We've heard from the deputations this evening. Today, 26% of under fives in London live in poverty. Who is responsible for this? The Labour opposition or the Tory and Lib Dem governments since 2010? They ushered in a wave of financial austerity measures that affect working people disproportionately and offer giveaways in their budgets. Hello, I've got an echo.
Okay.
I can do it by myself.
Councillor Wingfield, just to check that there's no electronic around you that is creating. I say just to check that there's no electronic around you creating the echo. I think I'm just about creating. No? Okay, I think it's fine. Thank you.
And offer giveaways in their budgets to the wealthy. Cuts to the health service, cuts to education, and of course, that's not me, cuts to local government. All of this has created greater inequality in the society around us here in Southwark. It also dents the aspirations and hopes of the younger generation. This is what I care passionately about, because with every passing day, this Tory government it's another day denying a child the same opportunity I had growing up. I know my heart can overrule my head sometimes, but it comes from a genuine place. When I see what the Tories and their light blue friends, the Lib Dems, have done, it makes me cry, literally cry in despair. As a boy coming from a working class family, my father was a car production worker and my mother a school meals driver. I know how it is to struggle. I was written off when I failed my 11+ exam, but the Labour government then introduced the comprehensive system, which allowed me to gain my A-levels and be the first in my family to go to university. I want every child here in Southwark to have the same opportunity. That's why I'm proud of the Council's record in transforming our schools, creating worthwhile jobs, building more council homes and delivering a healthier environment. The Southwark 2030 plan promotes the aspirations of all our residents so that nobody is left behind, and this Labour Council will deliver.
I'll now call on Councillor Victoria Mills to be followed finally by Councillor Catherine Rose.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to speak this evening about play, public realm and our spaces for girls and young women. I really do welcome the backbench motion we've got on play later this evening. We might not entirely agree, but actually we do recognise the importance of this issue as we head towards 2030. There are some brilliant commitments in our 2030 plans, but children don't just develop in their first 5 years. They don't just want life to be about school and then employment. And the joy of development and play and leisure and actively participating in their community is important throughout childhood. Often, our play provision for young people is skate parks, it's moogers, it's football pitches, and of course it's even an amazing BMX track. But Skateboard UK estimate that 85% of skateboarders are male. Surveys of moogers indicate that perhaps less than 10% of users are female. Across the UK, there are at least 8 times as many organised teams for boys than there are for girls' sports. And we estimate that maybe about 90% of informal kickabouts on our pitches are done by boys. Now, these are great facilities. Of course, I want continued investment in them. And of course, girls do use them too. But if you regularly spend time in our parks and our spaces, you know that those are often dominated by boys. And our young women, especially by 2030, deserve spaces that serve them too. And of course, there are many boys that don't use our existing facilities. I really welcome our continued investment in youth services and our Positive Futures Fund, but again, we know that our in-house youth provision is often predominantly dominated by young boys rather than girls. There's plenty of evidence to suggest that girls avoid using spaces where boys are. Taunting and shaming are some of the biggest reasons why teenage girls don't exercise. There are loads of requests that we can draw on from local young women for swings for older teenagers, trampolines, social seating and shelters, outdoor gyms that are weighted for young women, several smaller areas rather than one big area, so it's possible that women can kind of occupy one of those spaces, and also making sure that we recognise that teenage children want play, not just sports facilities. And of course, proper toilets. There was a recent survey done that said 78% of girls say that the lack of toilets is a barrier to them using a local park. Really shocking statistics. And then finally, I do want to, no, I'm not going to have time, quickly talk about safety and security. Quite often that prevents young girls using spaces. It means that parents often prevent them accessing them
Thank
too.
you.
So by 2030,
Thank you.
young girls to be central to our public realm with spaces designed by them.
Councillor Mills, thank you. I'll call on Councillor Catherine Rose.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to start it by dismissing claims from the opposition that to ask people how they envisage their own futures and that of their neighbourhoods as dismissed as a vague platitude is very disrespectful, not only to the wider community who took great care and attention to attend our events and to speak openly and freely and to challenge us as a council on what we're doing and how they would like to see their neighbourhood developed. And also they spent time to listen to each other, and we had people around the table at our various sessions, often entering the event with different perspectives, but all united and agreed through the process around prioritisation and working together collectively to develop a better Southwark. I would also ask the opposition to reflect on their remarks in the context of 2030 and the direction and vision it provides for our hard-working staff and our officers, and how the 2030 vision for the next 6 years provides a framework for them alongside our corporate and business plans, and that shouldn't be dismissed as gaslighting or as vague platitudes. Around 7 years ago, we began a major play audit, and that led to a £15 million programme over the next subsequent 3 to 4 years, delivering 10 major schemes in our parks. Now, it may strike the opposition as a bit of a surprise that you can multitask and do two things at once. One is improving and delivering on the basics, and the second is setting forward with a longer-term vision and sense of purpose for delivery. And often, the large capital programmes require that amount of time and consideration to get right and to deliver comprehensively for all our communities. So we make no apology for setting out our aspirations for 6 years' time. And the major play audit that was conducted in 2016 and delivered on major play improvements in our major parks is testament to the work and approach of previous administrations. But in our manifesto of 2022, we had wider political and bigger political aspirations for our communities. And we made a clear commitment around play and accessibility in that manifesto. And since that time, we've conducted a recent play audit, and taking on the comments of my colleague, Councillor Mills, in relation to the gendered aspects of play and the multidimensional aspects of play provision, I can hereby reassure colleagues that as part of this play audit work, we're looking at a whole council approach to play going forward, and that's testament to the leadership and ambition of this administration going forward. So currently our play provision is conducted through our playgrounds in parks, of which we have 59, but we have a total of 198 play spaces in our estates, and I hope to touch on later our ambition around play and that audit.
Thank you. We have reached the end of this session, so I shall ask Councillor Kieran Williams to respond to the debate. You have 3 minutes in which to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you to everyone who's spoken this evening and the inspiring contributions about the future of our borough. It's a little puzzling to hear the Lib Dems' responses. I think they can partly be summarised as consult more, but consultation is valueless, and tackle the housing crisis, but don't have a long-term plan. And then, yes, of course, there are basics for the council to get on with in the meantime. Of course there are. And we are absolutely committed as a council and as a Labour administration to driving up quality in many of our services, including our housing services, and we are working very hard to do so. But that, of course, doesn't exclude having a long-term plan and ambition for the borough we want to be. That ambition is what has guided us so well over the last 14 years. It's that ambition that has allowed us to be the council that's building the most council homes in the country. It's allowed us to be the council that's rolling out mental health services for all our young people, not just a tiny fraction. It's allowed us to extend our free healthy school meals, not just in primary and nursery and secondary, but in the holidays as well too. Ambition and long-term plans for our community. But to keep delivering those long-term plans after a decade, 14 years, of Tory governments and Lib Dem governments that have taken so much from our community, we do need to harness all the potential in our borough. Not just the council, our voluntary sector, our NHS, our police, our businesses. And that is the purpose for having a long-term plan for our borough. One that you can unite us, so that the work of First Place and Better Bankside and South London Listens can be united with the work of our council with shared destinations and shared ambition. And I am absolutely convinced, because of the nature of our borough and the people I meet every day as I go out around our borough, that we can achieve those huge step changes for our community again over the next few years ahead, as we have over the last 14 years. Delivering a Southwark where the gap in life chances is narrowing, where we have more potential for our children, where the housing crisis is being tackled, where we're sorting out the gaps in health inequalities, where we're growing an economy where our young people have a real chance to have a great job in the future. That's the ambition of a Labour council in this borough. That's the change that we're committed to delivering. And we will set long-term ambitions, and we will be ambitious, and we will not apologise for it.
I shall now move to the vote, initially voting on Amendment A and then the substantive. Those in favour of Amendment A? That is 10. Those against Amendment A? That is 49. Amendment A is lost. We will now vote on the substantive as amended. Those in favour of the substantive motion? Okay, that is 49. Those against the substantive? That is 10. The substantive is carried. As we have reached the end of the team debate, we have agreed to take a 5-minute recess. We will reconvene at 25 minutes past 8. Thank you.